So you're probably watching this video because you want to get the same build options that you have in Visual Studio to work in Visual Studio Code. So these options happen to be, link this in the description, will be development build, debug build, shipping build. So we won't be able to get all these check marks. So we're aiming for this table right here. And really this debug game gives Visual Studio Code the option to debug your game. It won't be able to debug the game modules, so the things that Unreal natively or like supports or has built. But we will be able to debug our own C++ classes. And so by the end of this video, you should have all these 5 check marks. So let's get to it. So I'm gonna do a blank project and I'm just gonna say random project. So, and then I'm gonna keep it in some UE4 games directory. I'm gonna make a blueprint just because I don't want it to generate any of the binaries. One thing I'm gonna show you though is random project. We have it right here. And as of now, it doesn't have any of the binaries. It just has the intermediates and the saved and the contents, which is important to note. So right now, if I were to go back to the UE4 and I were to just make a C++ project, let's see, okay, C++, and I'm just gonna make a pawn. So let's create one. That'll be the same for you as well. So I'm gonna change to that directory, and now I can run the build commands. There's a lot of similarities in this JSON file. Like there's a lot of, copy and paste didn't work. Okay, I'm gonna have to Ctrl C. There's a lot of similarities. So one thing is the target file is gonna be the name of the project you've given it. And Unreal is gonna generate this. So you don't have to worry about creating this Task.json. So I'm gonna copy this. And then the platform, it says Win32, but if we scroll down, we're gonna notice that there are options for Win64. Somewhere, at some point it gets to Win64. So I'm gonna save you the time and I'm just gonna put Win64. Okay, Win64, and now I'm gonna have the option. So right here it says debug, but I'm gonna do development. And this is essentially I wanted to compile my C++ project. And then from here, what I want to do is this has the uproject, and this is essentially the thing we saw here. Like this is your uproject in here. So yeah. So we have that. And we're gonna supply a flag, so waitmutex. And if we run this, it makes the CMake files and it generates everything. As it's generating this, one thing I wanted to show is that in the binaries, it's gonna probably change the binary or like add a binary because right now it's just the editor target and the DLL. But as we're building this, we're gonna notice that one thing it's going to generate is it's going to add more things into the binary. The binary, I find that it's probably the one, in terms of building your projects and doing stuff to it, like building your project, or if you're trying to test a shipping build or a debug build, you're probably going to be looking at the binaries because it's where it stores all the important build tasks. It even stores where where is it? Binaries, Win64. It even stores your project editor target. So this is your target file. So if I double click on that, I just have it set up for Vim, but it looks kind of ugly. But it specifies like the version of the engine and all of that. This is also the command where it generates all your files as well, like how it's generating your VS Code through this editor. So now it compiled and it worked. One thing too is another option you can do is Shift Command B. This is how you normally build with VS Code. Like it automates that. So instead of you writing the quotes and all that, like instead of you writing this command, the Shift Command B is, its purpose was to automate that. So if I do development build, Win64 development, there we go, or develop, debug, there we go, development build. If we run this, it doesn't work out of the box, and that's because the Task.json file that got generated isn't correct entirely. So if we were to go into the Win64 options, a lot of this is kind of repeated too, which is kind of a shame. It's like a lot of things that gets repeated. So for example, random project, build, debug, I think development is after that. Build, there we go, development. So one thing you'll notice is like, what's the difference between development and or what's the difference between build and rebuild? We'll notice that with the command, these are the same. The target, all these options are the same. So like they have all the same options. So really there's no difference. You're specifying the exact same arguments and the exact same flags and the exact same target file. So I don't even know why they have this option. Yeah, I don't even know. So, okay, so we're gonna fix this. So the first issue with this is that it's supposed to be passing it as quotes, but it's not. It's passing it as just as it is. So one thing I'm gonna do is I wanna escape the quotes because I want it to render in the engine, or I want it to render in the terminal. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna do that for this as well, because we need to escape the quotes because we need it to be put into the editor. So I'm going to escape the quotes, and then in doing so, I'm able to compile it now, and then now it added the quotes, and now it's able to build the target file. So since I already built it, it's saying, okay, it's up to date, but let's do something where I say int32 something and equals 7, right? And let's save it. And now let's do a Shift Command B, and then let's run it. And now it's gonna generate the files, and since the target is not up to date because I added something to the source files, it's gonna be regenerating everything again. And this is the same thing you would see in Visual Studio, just regular Visual Studio, these build options. One thing that's unfortunate is that as it is right now, the VS Code generated files, since you have to make these escapes, it's not just the development build that you have to escape. You have to do this for every single build in like a shipping build, a debug build. We have to do it for every single one because we have to escape the quotes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to run this command nor be able to find this file. So really, like these two issues kind of like propagate into like the rest of the JSON file. The Launch.json is like something we'll get into later. So we built it and it built successfully. One thing I wanted to highlight is that these types of builds, you don't even like this is a terminal emulator, so you don't even have to have it like in here. I could have just had this in the command prompt and then just pasted that in. One thing though is before I paste that in, I'm gonna have to CD into this project. I have to CD into the program files, and this is just to show that like you don't even have to have it running in Visual Studio Code. You can have it running in any command prompt you want. It's just you could be using any text editor you want. as long as you just specify these build options, you should be good. So I'm just gonna show you 4.26. Okay, of course. Okay, that's strange. 6. There we go. Okay, so we changed into that directory. And now we can run this build task that I just copied. I'm just going to copy this and hope it pastes. Hope it pastes. Okay, let's go. There we go. Let's go. Okay, so we got it to build, and we got it to build in the command prompt. So you can now use any editor you want. You know the builds. You just won't get the IntelliSense, but IntelliSense is overrated. Okay, so now we got it to build, and now what? So we got it to build in the source. What if? No, now it doesn't really matter at this point. Like I showed you the VS Code build and I showed you the regular build. But so if I were to use the regular build, it's kind of small. I wonder if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we have the engine. So, oh crap. Okay. So if I wanted to just run the editor build, all I have to specify is editor, and that's it. And everything else stays the same. And now compile, it will create the C makefiles. And one thing, I'm gonna go to here, because once this command is done, it succeeds, and then it builds on the editor. So it refreshes the editor essentially. So now let's do, we're able to debug the game and also build it. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to, we're able to build the game, or like build the Task.json and all of that. But now what we're going to do is we're going to try to debug the game. So in the Launch.json, that's where the options are for debugging. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this arrow symbol, and oh, you can't see the arrow symbol. Okay. And so if we were to run this, we don't need to see the code, so I'm just gonna pull up this. So if we were to run this, it's gonna run the launch.json, or it's gonna run the task.json for debugging. But you can't really, like the only option as it is right now for debugging is you're gonna hit debug game, and that gives you the ability to put breakpoints into your game module. So what I'm gonna do is in the begin play, I know this function's gonna get called when I hit the play button. So I'm just gonna say number, lucky number. And then I'm gonna just say 32. I'm gonna save that, and then I'm going to run this debug build game. And then I'm gonna run it on the editor because I wanna debug it in the editor. Like it's gonna show up in Visual Studio Code, but I wanna run it in the editor. So there's errors because in the task.json, the debug game, let's see. Debug game. There we go. Perfect. You also need to have the quotes in here. So once we do that, save it, and we're gonna do it in here as well. Save that. Now I'm kind of going back and forth between the command prompt and this, but really you can stick with any one that you feel more comfortable. I personally prefer the command prompt, or like bash or whatever. but it's the same thing. So now in the debugging window, you cannot see the debugging window. Okay, so now I'm going to run this DebugGame editor. I'm gonna run it and see if it fixed it. Okay, so now it's creating the CMake files, and it's because we were able to fix the JSON file. And so now it's running it, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna make another instance of the game engine. And it's gonna be specifically for debugging. So as it is right now, it's debugging everything, or it's not debugging everything, it's compiling everything, and where we have our breakpoint. Where's our breakpoint? Oh, I did not put a breakpoint. Put it right there. So where we have our breakpoint, it's gonna stop at that point, and we will be able to see all the local variables in here, and the watch and the call stack. So the launch.json is the thing that gets called once you are able to successfully build. So like once you're able to build, what it does is if I go to the folders in the binaries, we notice that there's a bunch of things in our binaries right now. And that was because I ran a bunch of options in the build. So this randomproject.exe, I believe it got built because we called the editor development build. And now it created a UE4 editor project build, I think. Wait. Okay, so now it's able to debug the thing, or now it's creating it's creating the same game, but it's making it in a new UE4 project. And right now you can see the call stack. And let's see. Okay, so now it popped up the game, and we have our development. So how am I going to show this? I wonder if I can, let's see. Yeah, close enough, yeah. Okay, so we have all this. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can minimize this. Okay, so, okay, we'll just play it here. So if I run this, okay, it was supposed to call the debug. Oh, I think I know why. It's because in my C++ classes, I never dragged the class to the editor. So now if I run it, hey, there we go. Okay, so now I dragged it and then I hit play, and now I'm able to debug it in here. So I'm actually going to minimize this. I cannot minimize it. Okay, it's because it's in debug mode right now. But okay, I'll just do that. And oh, there we go. Okay, so now it tells us the local variables. I kind of have it so that it's a little bit cut off, but we have our local variables, and it tells us parameter for this, and then it says the a pawn class, a actor. And so what I can do is I can do step over. One issue with this though is that you can't debug the macros, but then I think that's also, like, you won't be able to do that in Visual Studio either. So yeah, but right now we have information about, so if I minimize this, we have information about our lucky number, and since it's not initialized, it's this random number. But then once we initialize it, step over, and then it becomes 32. So we're able to monitor our variables in here. And yeah, so there's a bunch of things that could go wrong. One is that if you look at the launch.json, one thing it looks for is, it looks for a bunch of executable files, like UE4 Win64 Debug.exe. If you're not able to debug it from your Task.json, like the options, like the DebugGame Editor or the DebugGame console from the Task.json, Like how it works is you use the task.json to build your project and create the exes. The exe files will be stored in your binaries. And then from the binaries, so I have all these exes, and that was because I was building it from the editor. And it generated all these executables. From the end, what the task.json or the launch.json file does is it searches, it's like, okay, we have this executable, I want to run that, or it uses that essentially to make a new instance of the Unreal. And so you need that, essentially you need that for, you need to build your project from the task.json for it to create the executable, and you use that executable in your launch.json. So really the launch.json runs the pre-launch, and all the pre-launch does is it launches, or all the pre-launch does is it builds your project. But then to get this to build, it needs to run the task.json. So if the task.json is not working, then none of this is gonna work. Yeah, but that's all it does really. So there wasn't really any issues in here with the launch.json, so that's good. It's just like the task.json, you have to do these escape characters for each of the build options. Yeah, and that's really about it. So you have the task.json, which runs the commands. You can run these commands in Bash, or you can run these commands in the command prompt, and you can choose to run it either through the terminal for Linux, or the terminal for Visual Studio Code, or you can choose to run it through the command prompt. It doesn't really matter. But if you're gonna do the Shift Command B, just keep in mind that if you're gonna do the build options, like once you fix the task.json, like when you create a new project, it's gonna create the task.json, but it's the one with the wrong command option, or the wrong, like the one that doesn't escape the quotes. So each time you build your task.json through the VS Code test, or like each time it rebuilds the .vs Code directory, you're gonna have to fix it. So yeah, that's why I use the command prompt, because I just have it saved in there. I usually use a build script that automates this, but that's what the task.json file is supposed to be. It just doesn't work completely right. But yeah, if there's something that didn't work, it's not really that surprising, but if you just leave a comment and let me know.